Let's take a look at the concept of privilege. Often, conflict in organizations can occur as a result of factors we do not see or understand. One of these is privilege, which refers to a set of unearned resources or assets, which may come to a person as a result of gender, ethnic class, or other groupings into which the person is born. A person may be privileged by being born physically and mentally healthy to a stable family in an industrialized country with access to good healthcare, education, and financial support, opportunities to travel, and other assets. Within a society, such things are part of the institutions that structure the lives of everyone. However, they're usually designed to support needs and desires of whatever groups are more influential in the society. Often, people who benefit do not realize that they have advantage over the less fortunate, simply because of their way their environment is designed. This is the nature of privilege. This way of thinking leads to the assumption of meritocracy, which pervades our culture, an understanding that in society good things come on the basis of merit to those who are talented and capable and work hard and deserve them. In the broad societal context, the terms privilege does not imply that dominant groups exercise control intentionally or through force or violence, although there are certainly historical and contemporary examples of that. People who are shut out of opportunity as a result notice the inequity. They learn to interpret inequality in terms of institutional sources of opposition rather than only in terms of personal deficiencies of the oppressed. If recognized, those experiencing privilege may feel more obligated to address it. Those who are privileged often don't realize it. Their good fortune is usually at least partly responsible for opportunities available to them. They may feel as if their talents and efforts, their merits, justify these opportunities. This is referred to as a sense of entitlement. Powerful cultural forces in the US and some other societies led to a pervasive acceptance of the idea of meritocracy, that good things come to those who have the ability and who work hard. Meritocracy also implies that persons who lack attainment by the standards of the dominant group are unsuccessful because of their lack of ability, motivation, or both. Often, we use the terms racism or sexism to refer to prejudice against others of minority or gender status. However, institutional racism and sexism and other isms also exist. These terms refer not to the prejudice of individuals, but the negative consequences for non dominant groups of living and working within a culture designed by and for those in a dominant group. The institutions of a work organization include policies and procedures and governing structures, as well as strong norms and customs. In some work organizations, these may lead to systematic discrimination even in the absence of intentional prejudice and deliberate discrimination by members of the organization. A diversity manager should work to correct these systems whenever possible. Our assumptions and habits of thinking are affected by a process of social construction. Most of us feel as if we live our daily lives discovering reality as it already exists. In contrast, constructivism asserts that we actively create our understanding of reality as we give meaning to the world we encounter. Those in power in a society have greater influence than others upon development of language, how ideas are communicated through public media such as television, film, and print, and the sharing of ideas that we call education. People commonly think of others in terms of categories we call race. Many people could list physical characteristics of each racial category, perhaps even personality traits, typical skills or interests, or speech patterns. The concept of race is actually a way of categorizing people on the basis of how others respond to them and the implications of such responses for one's life chances and sense of identity. Some prefer the related term ethnicity, referring to broad groupings of people who vary in terms of culture of origin as well as what we conventionally think of as race. A different word reminds us that our ideas about racial characteristics have a social and cultural rather than biological basis. Other aspects of difference are also socially constructed, such as disability, age, and social class. Our interactions with individuals at work are conducted in the social context of society's interpretations of their apparent characteristics. We are more likely to have empathy and effective interactions if we view people as individuals. Among our assumptions and habits of thinking are attributions we make about why a person behaved in a particular way and why certain outcomes followed. Attribution theory concerns how we come to understand causes of behavior. Because we're likely to respond quite differently towards others depending on judgments of their abilities, motivation, and the circumstances of their behavior, attribution theory is clearly relevant to management of diversity and inclusion. An attribution is an assumption about causality. We attribute personality traits or abilities to people based on what they do and the circumstances and consequences of their behavior. One basic attributional distinction is between internal and external causes of behavior and its consequences. When we think someone was hired because of a high ability and motivation, we make a dispositional or internal attribution that they're likely to react differently to the person than if we think hiring was based on luck. Dispositional attributions often lead us to expect that the person will continue to perform at the same level, but situational attributions suggest that when the circumstances change, the person will behave differently. Attribution researchers have pointed out that we are more likely to notice and make attributions about behaviors that are unexpected, when they have positive or negative consequences for us, or when the person is important to us in some way. We're more likely to make attributions about behaviors that are unexpected or important. In organizations, there are perceptions of fairness of decisions and their consequences. Much research in organizational science has focused on how we perceive fairness or unfairness and how we react to these prescriptions. Many situations in diverse organizations deal with what people think is fair and not fair. Organizational applications of justice research began with equity theory, a social, psychological theory that deals with feelings of fairness in social situations. The essence of fairness judgment is a social comparison of oneself with a relationship partner. Equity theory is inherently social and comparative. We feel that a situation is fair when the ratio of our inputs to outputs is equal to the ratio of our chosen comparison person. Inputs and outputs need not be the same to generate a sense of fairness, but they should be proportional. For example, if I'm doing most of the work and receiving little in return, but the other is doing very little and getting the same reward as I am, that seems unfair. Strong feelings of unfairness can sometimes lead to turnover, low effort, sabotage, theft, work slowdowns or stoppages, and bad publicity. Equity theory reflects an individualistic and meritocratic understanding of fairness, one that seems quite reasonable in the US in terms of economic relationships and sometimes in social ones. In some cultures, people feel that things should be distributed equally or even based on need.